Story 1. My ex's grandma once tried to stop me from using my left hand. She said, "Back in my day, we would get beaten if we used our left hand." I simply responded with, "Sounds awful," and carried on. Then she said, "How rude. I demand you use your right hand. Did your parents teach you no manners?" Never spoke to her again, and she apparently had no idea why. Story 2. No, but my father was. He is deaf in his left ear and stutters because my grandfather and one of his teachers hit him over the head repeatedly for using his left hand. This was in the 1950s. On the other hand, I am ambidextrous aside from handwriting. Story 3. Millennial here. Not for writing. For basically everything else though. Scissors, knives, tools, shooting, bows. The safety mechanisms on most power tools are designed for right-handed operations. Most surgical instruments are set up for right-handed use. Hemostats and surgical scissors do not like to be used by the left hand. For most of this, I bought left-handed versions or taught myself to use them the right way. As a result, I am ambidextrous in almost everything but writing. I have left and right-handed bows and rifles and am pretty equal with both. Being able to swap hands with tools in confined spaces is pretty nice too. Story 4. Generation X. Baby sister was forced to use her right hand by her first-grade teacher. Mom found out and rained hellfire down on the school, but it had already been going on for months. Baby sister remains ambidextrous to this day. Story 5. I was not, but my mother couldn't understand how I kept destroying the left-handed scissors she was buying me. They kept warping and coming apart. Turns out, I write with my left but use scissors with my right. Story 6. You know the way that Taylor Swift holds her pen? That's how I held mine until adults told me I had to stop, and teachers wouldn't accept my classwork if they saw me writing like that. I am a California arts scholar in creative writing. They can all go to hell. Story 7. My dad, 1932 to 2020, was forced to use his right hand for writing in sport by Catholic nuns and brothers. As a result, he was pretty well ambidextrous. Story 8. Early 70s era, and yes, I was forced to use a pencil in my right hand with a special rubber finger holder. It lasted about 2 years until they gave up. I refused to take it seriously, as nobody could tell me why writing left-handed was so bad. Now I can write with both hands, but my left is better and more comfortable. Story 9. Millennial, and no, but the world is designed for right-handed people, so all I actually do with my dominant hand is write. I use my right hand for practically everything else. Story 10. My parents refused to believe I was left-handed until I was around 7 years old, I think. It didn't help that I had an older brother, so baseball gloves and such were handed down to me. If I wanted to play, I had to play right-handed. Being 7 years old, I had no idea this was even a thing. One day at practice, the coach was yelling at me and then realized, wait, try with this glove and throw with your left hand, and everything just worked. Pros: I'm pretty ambidextrous. Cons: I'm still left-handed. Story 11. I wasn't lefty forever, but my father was. He was born in the 40s, and the nuns at school would tie his hand behind his back to force him to be a righty. It didn't work. The idea at the time was that being left-handed was somehow associated with the devil. Story 12. Lefty. 5th grade teacher also taught me to tilt paper so as to not smear the lead or ink. I can do a lot more as a righty. It's a right-hander's world. I am very good at operating a pencil sharpener. Story 13. Not quite what you're asking, but my grandmother wanted to teach me to read books backwards because I'm a lefty. I'm very glad that the school taught me correctly first. Story 14. Older generation X. Yes. I started kindergarten in the early 70s. I still write with my left hand. I received horrible grades for handwriting and other classes if they relied on written answers, even if I had the correct answer. I gave up on schooling to a great degree. Story 15. Yes, I used to write with both hands, switched at the center of the page. Now I am mixed-handed. Right-handed writing, left-handed throwing and hitting. Handwriting from left and right was equally illegible. Mom was a teacher. I am an early millennial. Story 16. Younger millennial. My best friend is a lefty who does everything except writing with his right hand. When his mom taught him to shoot, she laughed and said, "No son of mine is going to be wasting money on left-handed guns. That lady is one of the coolest people I have ever met." Story 17, Millennial. Never forced to, but in 5th grade my teacher was visibly disgusted to see me writing with my left hand. She was old and from the South. A few years later, though, in 8th grade, I had a teacher tell me while I was signing something for her, "Oh, left-handed. I've heard that left-handed people have interesting destinies." She was wrong, but it stuck with me. Story 18. In 1969 or 1970, my brother was 5 years old and in kindergarten. My brother used his left hand to color with crayons, and an older teacher forced him to use his right hand. To this day, he writes with his right hand and has the worst handwriting I have ever seen. I was born a lefty 2 years later and was never told to use my right hand to write or color. Story 19, Millennial. Using your left hand was the devil's work. Laugh out loud. My 2nd grade teacher in But Funk, Iowa. Turns out I'm left-eye coordinated too, so thanks, Mrs. Meinberg. Story 20. That's a theory my mother and I had. Not so much forced, but me trying to fit in and assumptions made. My handwriting is atrocious, to the extent that I was tutored in middle school for penmanship. All my teachers complained. I do a ton of stuff left-handed, dialing the phone back when we did that, swimming and so on. Thankfully, I learned to type before it was popular, so I was able to manage. Generation Jones. Story 21. Yes, on both, although I don't remember it. Based on stories I've been told, apparently through kindergarten, both my parents and teachers would place the pen in my right hand, and I would automatically switch it to my left. They eventually gave up trying. Story 22. My 90-year-old dad is just fascinated by left-handed people. He watches every grandchild's hand preference closely. He hasn't tried to change it, he just seems to think it's very important. I think he knew people whose parents forced their left-handed kids to use their right hand. Story 23. My daughter is left-handed and she's 10. When she was 6, her teacher tried to make her right-handed. It took a while to understand what was going on, and her dad was very upset. She was struggling so much. Bless her. They even have to earn a pen license at their school, and they make a big deal out of it too. Because of this teacher, she was behind with her handwriting, and even now, in year 5, she still hasn't earned her pen license, and she's heartbroken over it. She even practices handwriting at home, and to be honest, it's not bad at all. I can read everything she writes. It's weird to watch her because left-handed people writing fascinates me. It's also wrong. She loves her granddad. He writes with both hands. Story 24. Yes, my father was left-handed, and I was as well from birth until grade school when a teacher decided that a pointer, the long dowel rod version, was the perfect tool to make me decide not to be. Every time I picked up a pencil with my left hand, that thing would come whistling down out of nowhere until I just stopped using it. I've used my right hand for dexterous activities ever since. I'm a baby boomer. Story 25. Was never beaten, hit, or had anything done to me because I am left-handed. Also, I am 29. My grandfather was born in 1932 and was subsequently taught not to use his right hand, so his handwriting from both hands was just never good. My nephew is 2, and it appears he is favoring his left hand. Woohoo! My brother-in-law's mother, though, has told my sister and brother-in-law that they should correct it, so that sentiment has not completely died out, apparently. Story 26. Had my left arm tied to a chair leg, ruler slaps across my hand, slaps on the head, etc. I am now very ambidextrous, especially in writing and sports. Story 27. My child's, born 2008, preschool made him use his right hand in preparation for elementary school. He's now mostly right-handed but is awkwardly a lefty at some things. Story 28. Born in 1993, elementary school teachers, grades 1 to 6, really pushed for me to switch to right-handed for everything. The teachers would tell me I would not make it far as a lefty. I made the choice of using both hands throughout the day. Taught myself enough to be ambidextrous. Teachers stopped complaining. I went back to left-handed fully in high school. As for home, parents did not care as long as I got my work done. Grandma was left-handed as well, and Catholic school forced her to use her right hand. Grandpa hated that I was a lefty. I had to learn how to use tools and other things right-handed. Story 29. My uncle was born in the 1940s. As for myself, I am a younger millennial, and while technically I wasn't forced to use my right hand for tasks, I basically had no choice when it came to computers. The mouse was always on the right side, and there was no easy way to place it on the left, especially in school, so I grew up using my right hand for that. I mean, I could try to loop the wire to the other side, but more often than not, I would knock something like the keyboard over. Now I'm at a point where using a mouse in either hand is a struggle, unfortunately. My left hand doesn't have the muscle memory and is just too uncomfortable to bother learning with, and my right hand hurts to hold a mouse nowadays because I was born with the hand slightly deformed. It wasn't an issue when I was small, but as I grew, it just became more and more of a problem. So yes, I'm one of the few people who prefer to use a touchpad. Story 30. Millennial that was definitely never forced to use my right, but was also never really taught how to do things with my left. Coaches and teachers especially just never bothered to think that there was anyone but right-handed people around, so I eventually just adapted to being a confused kind of ambidextrous. Story 31. My first grade teacher told my parents to tie my left hand to the chair because if I was left-handed, I would never be successful. My parents went crazy on that lady. I was born in January 1990. Story 32. I had a writing teacher who made everyone use their right hand. This was in the early 1990s in Mississippi. I moved around a lot, though, and didn't have the same experience in Louisiana at about the same time, so I think it was more of an older teacher clinging to old methods than anything else. Story 33. I'm on the cusp of being a zennial. In preschool, a teacher tied my left arm behind my back to force me to write right-handed. My mom was extremely upset when she found out, and I was allowed to use my left. That teacher still tried other ways. I was denied left-handed scissors. I am now ambidextrous and tend to switch hands when working on tasks like sewing or painting. Story 34. I am left-handed female born in 1974. No stigma or issues that I know of. In other matters, I am not left or right-wing politically. I am a bit moderate and unaffiliated. I have both right and left views depending on the issues. Story 35. I think someone tried once in kindergarten, maybe a substitute teacher or something, but I only recall a single instance and then it never happened again. Story 36. Grade school, early 60s. Never pushed to use the right hand, but a teacher in second grade asked me why I wrote on the chalkboard with my right hand but used my left hand for everything else. I guess I was just mimicking others, and since it was arithmetic, it wasn't as obvious to me as writing. Story 37. Zennial here. It was the opposite for me. I was made to be left-handed. Parents would take pens or things from my right hand and put them in my left hand. Apparently, it was going to make me a more formidable opponent in some sports that I was never put in during my youth and have never played at any point in my life. I was usually the only or one of 2 or 3 left-handed kids growing up. Now, I am around many more left-handed teenagers, my kids' friends. Still rare, but not nearly as much. Story 38. My aunt went to Catholic school in the late 50s, and they wouldn't let her write with her left hand. The nuns would smack her left hand with a ruler if she was writing with it, so she was forced to become a righty. As a millennial, I've never heard of this happening in my generation. Story 39. I'm a millennial, and I was allowed to use my left hand. In university, I was asked by an international student why my parents let me use my left hand, though. Story 40. Never, fortunately. Zennial here. On the other hand, I know a coworker who was forced into right-handedness by the teachers and nuns at his Catholic school. Apparently, that was a thing back in the day. He's an older Generation X, so I assume this was back in the 1970s or early 1980s. Story 41. I lived in a weird little part of Pennsylvania for a bit that had an overlap of a bunch of cloistered religious communities. My best friend was left-handed, but our teacher thought that was unchristian. No, I have no clue where that bizarre thought was seated. And in this public school in the middle of Amish and Mennonite country kept trying to force him to use his right hand to learn cursive to do right by God. So I, rebel may I ever be, insisted he not give in to her and tried to protest by learning to write left-handed. Problem being, my handwriting was poor no matter what. My hands were too shaky. I was a straight A student, but after a year of that, my fifth grade teacher told me to stop trying to write cursive either left or right-handed because I was not good at it. I was good at everything else, and he was just going to give me a passing grade and stop having me take the test so he could retire, and we could just tough it out. Then the friend died of a football-sized tumor on his left kidney. Moral of the story: fake to the right. Story 42. First grade 1959. My fairly new first grade teacher knew to let me be left-handed, but wasn't very good at teaching me how to write left-handed. My C in penmanship in third grade still hurts. Sputnik's launch caused fear that American children were bad at math, and I had all the new math for many years. Now we're afraid American children think they're cats or might change gender and vilify teachers. Story 43. I am a Generation X daughter of a left-handed parent and ended up ambidextrous. When I tried using my left hand at school, I was told that I was right-handed and couldn't use my left hand. I lost a lot of my ability to use my left hand when writing as a result. Once I got into massage therapy, I was able to easily integrate both hands into the work because of this trait. I watched others struggle, and they asked how I did it so easily. One of my children, a member of Generation Z, is fiercely left-handed. His father is also left-handed, and I homeschooled him with his brothers for a couple of years, making sure he got the opportunity to properly learn in a way that was most comfortable for him. My third son, part of Generation Z, is ambidextrous as well. His father was born left-handed and forced to use his right hand, but we encouraged him to use whatever hand felt most comfortable for him. His kindergarten teacher tried to impose right-only pencil and crayon usage for him. We shut that down and told her the child is ambidextrous, and we encourage comfort. He ended up writing with his right hand and doing all his artwork with his left.